The other day I heard one of the Zen teachers, no, actually it was Tenzin Palmo, a Tibetan teacher, say it takes effort to be effortless. Yeah, it does take effort to be effortless. It takes effort for us to become wise and to become peaceful and to have compassion that is all-inclusive. It takes effort, especially in the early years it takes effort. And then after a while it takes less effort because we have more faith. We have more faith, and so then it's not so effortful to get up in the morning or to listen to the teachings and take them in. There's more faith and trust. So then the effort gets a little bit less, but it still always takes effort. I was thinking about the ways in which we support ourselves with this effort. So we can see the Buddha statue there. The ways that we support ourselves, and we have what are called the three treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. And so the way in practice we can benefit from the three treasures is the Buddha is us sitting in our Zazen posture. So we're sitting in our Zazen posture. This is like we're embodying being the Buddha who woke up under the Bodhi tree in this posture. And so we sit in this posture. Variations depending on our body. But basically, the main thing about our posture is that the spine is straight and the mind is gentle and wide. So that's the treasure of the Buddha. And then the treasure of the Dharma is the teachings. So we're going to talk about one of the teachings today and the study that we do. So that supports our practice. And then the treasure of the Sangha is our literal Sangha, turning up together online and in person, but also the Sangha of just our life, the people and the communities in our life, plants, animals and objects. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about why what the Buddha taught about why we find it so difficult to be wise and kind and peaceful. Why do we find this so difficult? And one of the things that he taught is that because we have language, we use language, and like what I'm about to say, none of us, we all know this, it's not really very complicated, but to really absorb it and apply it in our lives, it's subtle and it takes a lot of reflection to in practice really embrace this teaching. So the Buddha talked about it a lot, even though it's not really that hard, just superficially. So we use language and signs and symbols to impute meaning onto something, or to impute, to put onto something a definition or an identity or an essence. We put that onto things. So we use language to name things. Chair, Neti, and so on. And not just nouns, we also impute qualities onto things like, I like this chair, or I don't like this chair is too hard, this chair is too soft, and so on. And this putting on top of things a word with all of the associations that we have with that word is very useful. It's very useful. We couldn't communicate with each other. If we didn't have the word chair, it would just be so complicated trying to explain what you wanted to someone if you didn't have a word for it. So it totally is useful and it's wonderful. But the great problem, this is what the Buddha taught, the great problem is that we believe our imputations. We believe them and think they're the whole story. And there's this beautiful parable, I guess you call it. It's either in the Samdhinamochana Sutra or in Nagarjuna's Middle Way teachings. I can't quite remember where I came across it, but I've loved holding it in my mind. So the story, which I think I may have told some time ago, is that there is this very famous magician everybody's heard about. Everybody thinks this magician is amazing. And what the magician does is he has 2 sticks, and he rubs those 2 sticks together and recites a mantra, and transforms these 2 sticks into an incredibly spectacular elephant with garlands of marigolds and painted patterns all over it and beautiful jewellery strewn across it, and this incredibly beautiful elephant. And people are all there, and they just mesmerised by this amazing elephant. And because they're so mesmerised by the elephant, it's so compelling. I mean, it's an incredible magician. He really can, just by rubbing these 2 sticks and saying a mantra, create this spectacular elephant. And in the story, it's often seen as like a meeting of roads. In the middle of the meeting of the roads, people come from all different directions to see this magician do this thing. And because he's such a skillful magician, people forget that the elephant is actually just 2 sticks. It's not really an elephant, it's just 2 sticks. But people forget that. And that's why it's so exciting in a lot of ways. So nobody ever sees those 2 sticks, ever. No one ever sees those 2 sticks. All they ever see is the incredible creations of this magician, which in this story is a beautifully decorated elephant. But for us, it could be any number of things. A really tall glass building, a Tesla, a cup of coffee, someone you don't like, someone you do like. So the magician, of course, is actually our mind. The magician is our mind. And the 2 sticks is the way things actually are. But we never see the way things actually are. It's not possible for us to see the way things actually are. All we see is the elephant in all its myriad manifestations that we as incredible magicians create. So what I like about this particular way of describing it is it's not saying that there isn't something there. In this story, it's 2 sticks, which I also like because it's just kind of cute. Just simple 2 sticks, a bit like our clappers that we use for kinhin. It's not saying there's nothing there, but it is saying we never see what's there. We never, ever see what's there. Only thing that we see is what our mind interprets, what our mind puts on the 2 sticks. And the Buddha's teaching here is one of the most powerful things that we put on things is imputations, is words. And our practice, and this takes effort, is to really notice that that is what we're doing, and to not lose sight of the fact that no matter what's in front of me, and no matter how many other people call it that thing, including myself, it's actually just 2 sticks. And it's kind of hard to want to hate 2 sticks, for example. If everybody in the world knew that the people that they don't like are just 2 sticks, they'd be much less likely to invest billions of dollars in weaponry to go and kill those sticks. They'd be just much less likely to do it. If we remembered that it's just 2 sticks, then some person that we have conflict with, we would not spend as much time in the privacy of our own minds thinking about what's so wrong with them. We just wouldn't. We'd say, this is ridiculous for me to be spending so much time thinking about what to say, or what I should have said, or what they said, or what they should have said. They're just two sticks, and I don't even know what two sticks are. I've never seen two sticks. I don't know what two sticks are. I've been talking to people in America, of course, and people have lots of strong feelings about the most recent election. It reminded me a little bit of here, maybe it was a year and a half ago, when we had a referendum about a voice to Parliament for Indigenous people, and we voted against it. And some people were just so shocked. How could we do that? How could we not support something so simple as the First Nations people being able to just advise the government on what their needs are? But that is what we did. And people in America just did what they did. But both sides, wherever you are on this spectrum, they're all just sticks. And we don't know what they are. We can't see what they really are. We can't see. And I think now particularly that because people get their information in such different places, people watch different sorts of news and have different sorts of social media feeds, we think we know what other people are thinking, but we know even less. As time goes on with the sophistication of technology now, we know less and less about what other people are hearing and seeing, and opinions that they're hearing and watching. We just don't even know. So, we can have an opinion about how could they do that? Well, we should answer that question. How can they do that? So besides the fact that we can't ever know anyone or anything, we still make an effort to at least provisionally try and understand with a compassionate heart why someone might do something that seems like a crazy thing to do. So I love this story of the magician. I always have to pause because I want to say musician, and I have to say it's not the musician, it's magician. Whether we use the word musician more often than we use the word magician. But I love this image of this magician reciting a mantra, rubbing two sticks, and a beautiful big elephant appears. Or it could be like a terrifying, stampeding type of an elephant. The point is that people get enamoured by it. That's why in the story it's beautiful, because people look at it going, ah! And we go like, ah, around things we don't like as well. Like, I really don't like that. And we fixate on the thing that we don't like. So it's a kind of still getting enamoured. We get enamoured with our opinions and our aversions. So this kind of imputation, I think it's a great word. And another word that is often used is, rather than talking about people or things, often the word phenomena is used. And I think that's very helpful, because the word phenomena means how things appear. If you just sort of look up the word, the definition is phenomena is the way things appear to us. But we can try and even take the word things out and just say phenomena is appearances. Appearances as well as sort of like sounds and sensations, but it's just easier to use the word appearances. So the Buddha describes that we impute words onto phenomena. And it's very helpful, I think, to think of the word phenomena, because it helps us yet again shift a little bit from thinking things actually exist in a way that we can understand. They do exist, but they're not this big colourful elephant or stampeding elephant. They're just other thing behind that we can't see, two sticks, we can't see it. So the word phenomena helps us say, oh, this elephant is just an appearance. This family member that annoys me is just an appearance. Not non-existent, but they're an appearance, they're a phenomena. I'm experiencing, light is bouncing off them, sound is bouncing off them. It's an experience that I'm having, and I'm adding a word to this thing I'm experiencing. And the whole point of trying to talk like this, which might sound kind of a little bit like, why are we trying to break things up like this? But the whole point is because people believe themselves in ways that turn out to cause them a lot of suffering and others a lot of suffering. Because it's not true, because it's not accurate. Things don't exist independently as separate entities. They just don't. Even though they look like they do, they really don't. And when we don't function in accord with reality, we make mistakes and cause harm. So this is why the Buddha took time, and many of his disciples and their disciples over the centuries have taken the time to carefully look at this. So I want to read just a little bit on this imputations and phenomena, imputing phenomena, from Reb Anderson, the third turning of the wheel, on the Samdhina Sutra. So just get back to the beginning about effort. So just kind of listening to this might take a bit of effort, but it's really worth it. The imputational character is something that is projected onto phenomena in order to be able to use conventional designations such as words. To impute means to put on top of, to superimpose. The root of the word impute means to say. We feel a need to say something about phenomena in order to grasp them. In the storehouse consciousness, which we've talked about before, like all our past experiences which influence the way we interpret things, what we choose to look at, and how we see it, the lens that we see it through, that's the storehouse consciousness. In the storehouse consciousness, there is a deep unconscious propensity to make conventional designations with regard to things. In order to talk about what is happening in our life, we must impute something to what is happening. And we do like to talk about our life. In fact, we have to. Even Buddha has to talk about life in order to relate to sentient beings. It's part of the human condition. But in order to do that, we must impute something to our life. If we just sit upright with what's happening without imputing anything to it, we can't talk about it. Next, Buddha tells us that it is what we impute or superimpose. Next, Buddha tells us what it is that we impute or superimpose. Essences and attributes. And how do we do that? We do it with words, symbols, and conceptual consciousness. We use our wonderful conceptual consciousness to impute imaginary things, this is the elephant, imaginary things onto phenomena. We impute or superimpose an essence, an entity, a being. Phenomena are actually free of essences, entities, and selves. In order to talk about things, we cut up this amazing, ungraspable, inconceivable reality into little packages that we can get a hold of. Then we bolster the projection by imputing essences and attributes onto the things we created. This imputational character is also called mere fantasy, because none of those essences, selves, or attributes really exist. Like the elephant, it's a fantasy. The Sanskrit term for the imputational is parikalpita, which could be imaginatively translated as complete, unsurpassed, perfect fantasy. So this imputational imputational character is sometimes referred to as the imaginary nature. So reality can sometimes be described as, we talk about form and emptiness, two truths. There's another way. It's a set of three. The imaginary nature, which is the imputational nature. That means we call it a chair, but we don't know what it is. It's not a chair. It's our imagination that calls it a chair. It's our imaginary nature. Interdependent, but sometimes called other-dependent, which I really like. It's slightly harder to sort of wrap your mind around. But the other-dependent nature, which is, so there's this imaginary nature, and then the other dependent nature in relation to a chair, for example, is all the things that the chair is made of. Trees and crafts, persons, and so on. But I like the way, it's nice to say other dependent rather than interdependent, because that emphasizes that it's everything other than itself that makes it. And we've talked about that quite a bit. Everything other, Neti is made of everything other than Neti. I can't possibly make myself. Everybody else makes me, everything else makes me. The chair is the same. It can't make itself. Everything other than chair makes a chair. So the other dependent nature. So one way to help us remind ourselves that our imputations are just fantasy, one way to help us do that is to think about the other dependent nature. To think about, a good example, of course, is a person who does behave badly in our mind, behaves badly. Maybe in the minds of lots of people, but probably not in their mind. Usually people don't say, I love behaving badly. They usually don't say that. Other people say, oh my God, they're so annoying, but they don't usually think they're annoying. So the good thing to remember, if you have that thought about someone, of course, is to really genuinely ask, what are all the causes and conditions that cause them to be what we perceive as annoying? And it's not very hard if you just let yourself do that. And this is the other dependent nature. You think about their whole life, their economic status, their parents, country that they're from, or it doesn't really matter. All of the things. That's contemplating the other dependent. And then the third nature is sometimes called the consummate nature, the ultimate nature, the absolute nature. And it correlates fairly neatly with the teachings on emptiness. That it's kind of like the unknowable two sticks. This is the lack of boundary at all between anything. So nothing is static and nothing can be put in a container. You can't grasp it. Everything's ungraspable. So you have the imaginary nature, the other dependent nature, and the consummate nature, or ultimate nature. So just thinking about things that way, whenever I find myself getting a little bit stuck, and the way I find myself getting a bit stuck is I'm starting to have a repetitive thought about something that's making me not feel particularly peaceful. Like somebody said something, I think that they've misinterpreted me, I don't feel good about that, I kind of want to explain to them why I think they've got it wrong, and I'm repeating that over and over in my head. So that's the kind of, a simple example. If I find myself getting caught in a little loop like that, I try to just slow my whole self down. Think about these three natures. Remind myself that I don't really understand what lies behind the other person's words. I don't even know who they are. I don't even know who I am. Just slow myself right down. And then often when I do that, and the thought too that this is a good way, whenever we're disrupted, we can be very sure that there's something a little amiss in our thinking. I mean, maybe not in the immediate, like if you fall over and break your leg, it makes sense, you're just going to be in pain. But when it starts to be protracted, it starts to go on, you've been struck by the first arrow, and you've struck yourself again with the second arrow, when you do that with that second arrow, then that's the time to slow down a little bit and remember these teachings. So you can think about it in terms of these three natures. The imaginary nature, I don't really know who that person is or exactly what happened or why it happened or why I'm reacting this way. I don't really know. Just be open that way. Think about the other dependent nature. What are all the infinite number of causes and conditions going on here beyond my comprehension, but what are they to help loosen a sort of narrow fixation that we might have? And then the sort of consummate nature, ultimate nature, just really open up to the boundarylessness so that the self and other are actually not different. So I think I'd like to finish with this poem, which is very, very well known. It's a little bit long, but that's okay. By Thich Nhat Hanh, Please Call Me By My True Names. And in a way, this poem, we can end up being like this if we really allow the three treasures to transform us by sitting, by studying and listening to Dharma, and by being in Sangha, being in the world, being on our worldly pilgrimage every day. So I'll read out this poem. Please call me by my true names. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am a mayflower metamorphizing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am a frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am also the pirate, my heart yet not capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labour camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can see my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up and the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. In this poem, I think particularly the paragraph about the girl and the pirate, people often quote that particular couplet there. Because for us to be able to truly see ourselves in both those two people, the vulnerable girl who's been so traumatized she throws herself into the ocean and drowns, and the pirate who traumatized her so profoundly. But to see ourselves in the pirate as well as in the girl, so important that we do that. Often people make the mistake with compassion to be compassionate just to one side, like be compassionate to the girl. But we have to be compassionate to the pirate. They're both just 2 sticks. They're not different to each other, actually. Ultimately, they're not different. And if we get self-righteous and have compassion for one and not for the other, we're making a grave mistake. We're perpetuating the illusion that our imputations are true. Perpetuate that illusion. So one last thing I'll share too is a koan from the Gateless Barrier. I think it's case 37. A monk asked Jiao Zhou, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West? Jiao Zhou says, the oak tree in the courtyard. And the monk says, don't teach me with reference to outside things. And Jiao Zhou says, I don't teach with reference to outside things. The monk says, well, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West? And Jiao Zhou says, the oak tree in the courtyard. That's how we want to be, to not see that the oak tree is over there and I am over here. The oak tree is a tree and I am a human. We don't want to do that. We want to just be so in love with the oak tree that we dissolve. That our sense of ourself as a separate entity dissolves. All right. Thank you. Would anyone like to comment or ask a question? It's nice to have conversation. Bill.
In the past, you've talked about how in Buddhist philosophy there's 6 senses and not just 5.
Yep.
Does this relate to that? Like, is the idea that thinking, being one of the senses, is sort of something you can't get around? Like, maybe you're sensing something in the world, you're imputing naturally something into it as well.
Yes, that's right. So Bill was just asking about the 6 senses. How does this relate to them? And accurately describing that we can't get away from this 6th sense, just like we can't get away from our other senses. We can't get away from our mind. It does impute things. And this is why we don't need to have any ill feeling. It's so important not to have ill feeling towards imputations, not to have ill feeling towards language. The Buddha's just teaching us, just don't believe it. Like, we don't want to hurt the magician. We don't want to hurt the magician. Everybody's come there. Everyone loves this magician. Like, we don't want to get rid of him or her. I mean, life would be so boring if there was just nothing there. So we can love the magician. We just have to remember that he's a magician. That's all. We just have to remember that. Always remember that. So yeah, thank you for that. Fiona?
Thank you, Neti. A lot to take in. So, listening, I'm aware. I'm more aware of my thinking when I'm judging and self-righteous, and I feel a little pang about that. Like, oh, because I think it is painful. Ultimately, it does catch me in a loop. Ultimately, it doesn't resolve. And it seems to be that there is alternative paths, alternative responses, which don't involve that kind of fear of the other, and that all those things. Yeah, there's a lot to reflect on. Thank you.
And it's an act of grace for us to notice how we get caught up in our thoughts. So we didn't feel that little bit of pain, noticing our delusional thinking, if we didn't feel that, then we couldn't deepen in our practice. So it's a form of grace to feel that little pain of regret when we know that we've believed our imputations. So that's a good thing, Fiona. Brendan?
Yeah, thanks, Neti. I really enjoyed the talk. And this idea that we impute these qualities onto objects and we believe that they're inherent to the object, that they exist objectively. And I'd just like to add that even what gives us the ability to discern something as distinct from other things is our mind. So what creates things is our thoughts about them. So our thoughts create our world, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you able to hear that? Ah, sorry. I thought he would maybe just be able to hear. I'm not sure I can paraphrase, but Brendan just really said very nicely what this talk was about. And emphasising that it's with our mind that we create what we experience. All right? Let's chant together and bow together. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.